Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and once again it's time for the Q&A, so let's go ahead and get this started. Alright, first question. Why are pendlay rows so hard to progress on if you do them strict? I've been doing sets of 10 with 135 for 2 months or more combined with chest-supported rows 4 days a week. And I've gained noticeable size in my mid and upper back, but I maybe gained 5 pounds on my 10 rep sets, if that. Should I just accept some minimal body English there in order to progress, or is maintaining strictness a bigger priority? The pendlay row is one of those exercises, but here's what I would say. Isn't that true once you're out of the early novice phase? Isn't that true of any really strict exercise? In other words, let's say your pause bench, your 10 rep max on your pause bench. It might take a little while for that to go up 5 or 10 pounds, right? It might take a little bit, okay? And the other thing to think about with the pendlay row, it's very much a speed strength oriented lift. In other words, even though you've only put 5 pounds on it, you might find that the bar is moving faster. And that's the type of exercise to where if the bar speed is up, then we are getting a slightly better stimulus even at the same weight. Okay, especially if we're staying really, really strict. Okay, especially if we're staying really strict. But here's the other thing I would say. Have you tried AMREPing it? In other words, you're concerned you may not be able to increase the weight, but I would say maybe your final sets, all right, let's say you're doing 3 by 10 or whatever you're doing. Why don't you get to the last set and see if you can get more reps and still stay strict? If you can hit 12 or 13 reps, then maybe you've been sandbagging a little bit. Throw a little bit more onto there, okay? And you take it to failure. Or a form breakdown would be failure on that lift. Unless you've got percentages to work off of. AMREPs can be a good way to assess that. Not saying, well, how many reps do I think I have left? What's my RPE? No, you get in and you just take it to a limit set. And quite frankly, pendlay rows are very easy to recover from. Doing a set to failure to make sure that you're not holding back at the end is absolutely not going to impact your recovery. They're very easy to recover from when they're done strictly. So it's not a big deal. Just go in and do that. Knock it out. And you might be surprised. But at the end of the day, if you've added 5 pounds to the lift, you're also doing other supplemental back work. And if the bar is moving faster while staying strict, your overload might be a little more than you think it is. And that would explain a lot of your progress. But, just keep going at it. It takes a very, very, very long time to hit stuff like 200 for 10 for strict reps on a movement like that. Okay? And you're probably going to have a pretty big back by that point. Like real big. All right, next question. Hi Jason, one question. Do you generally recommend upper-lower programs or full body 2 to 3 times a week for advanced lifters who also work heavy manual labor job on their feet 8 hours a day, 5 days a week? I'm asking this mainly from the recovery standpoint. Okay. Let me put into perspective. I have actually had longer shifts than that. Again, contrary to silly rumors on the internet, when I was 30 years old, in late 20s, I worked a 60-hour week. Okay? I worked a 60-hour work week. It wasn't manual labor, but I was on my feet a lot. But I worked 12-hour shifts, and I used to go in and do a 4-day upper-lower. And for people to say, well, gear, I wasn't on gear. I wasn't on gear at that time. I had come completely off and had done a bunch of PCT and was completely clean. Okay, and I actually had pretty dang good numbers at that time. So I tend to recommend that. And here's what I would say. I don't recommend full body for anyone anymore who's not a complete rank novice. First 6 months in the gym. If you've been training longer than 6 months, let's venture away from full body. That's something I changed a very, very, very long time ago. So here's what I would say. If your recovery is so compromised due to your job that you can really only train 3 days a week, then you still need to do an upper-lower and just space it out. In other words, trying to maximize the frequency when you're dealing with recovery issues from a very difficult job is not ideal. Right? That's not good at all. Because what you end up have happening is that it's hard to get really your minimum effective volumes. It's hard to get enough volume to grow off of on full body. When you're an advanced lifter, if you're doing a full body workout and you're training your whole body, it is very difficult to get enough training load to get a good hypertrophic response. You're going to have a lot of areas that get neglected. Okay, your needs are going to be higher. Your specialized needs are higher. A lot of your muscles are going to need a lot more total volume than they did when you were a novice. Novices can get away with that. So in order to get enough workload in, you're going to need to space it out into upper lowers anyways, right? And if you're doing that, then your recovery, you're doing a lot of volume per session. And you may not be able to pull off the 4 days a week if your job is that intense, right? So I'm going to say at that point, go to a 3-day upper lower, which means, yeah, every muscle is only going to get worked about once every 4 days, right? It's only get worked every 4 days or so, and you're going to have downtime. And people will say, well, that's not ideal for muscle proteins. And so that's arguable, but the fact of the matter is, trying to hit everything 3 times a week and not get adequate stimulus in everything is actually worse, in my opinion. So that's what I would do. It's the same thing I prescribe to people who have a very, very strenuous conditioning and practice who do a sport. Okay, for a lot of my lifters who, again, maybe do BJJ or something like that, we space it out the same way for their upper-lower conjugates. And a lot of my lifters have very good success with that, but it's because their workloads are so high outside of the gym. And your job might be a similar situation. And if it is, then that's the way you need to space it out. And I think you'll get the best results doing that. It's just my opinion. All right, next question. How should I calculate percentages for accessories? As an early intermediate, I only max on a few lifts. Good mornings are nowhere near my squat. Same goes towards rows, since we don't max on them at all. Thank you. Based on your other lifts, you need to be working towards those goals. Okay, realistically, you need to calculate and work towards getting your good morning to at least 90% of your squat. Okay, if you can't good morning with your squat, that's fine. A lot of lifters can't. That's an ideal goal. Ironically, I have 2 lifters who can good morning more than they squat. They're the odd men out, right? That's out of right now, I think 24 lifters. I have 2 who can good morning more than they squat. So, and even then, less than half of my lifters can actually good morning what they squat. Less than half. So I would say start working towards that. So what does that mean for tens? Well, if you're 10% lighter, start trying to work with tens at 60%. And then, like I said on the first thing with rows, AMRAP it. AMRAP it. I'd like to see strict rows as strong as your bench. That's usually a goal I set for a lot of my lifters. I'd like to see them be able to row at least with one grip, their strongest grip on the row, just like their strongest grip on the bench, as much as they do. And maybe their weakest grip being the weakest. In other words, they're weak on a snatch grip row and they're weaker at a closed grip bench. Maybe line those up and use those to determine kind of the ratios we're looking for. That's usually what I look for in a lot of my lifters. So yes, in other words, that means if I have a lifter who can do 275 for 10 reps on a bench press, I expect him to be doing close to 275 for 10 reps on the pendlay row. But again, the point we can do, you can run these lesser percentages and build to it, and then use AMRAPs to determine where you are. Final set, you can always AMRAP to determine what your real max should be in a calculator, so that you can come back and you can calculate percentages of your max based on that. Right? Because if you're doing sets of 10 and you can knock out 12 reps on an AMRAP on the last set, you're pussyfooting around. You don't have enough weight on the bar. Okay? You're just doing junk training. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.